Chris, thank you so much for being on board on Transatlantic. What a gift. Thanks for your time and for let me cross your ocean.
Well, I mean, it's an honor. I've been tracking and following you for a while now, and your interviews are amazing. I've been engaged, and so thank you for the opportunity.
Okay, so I'm very excited today. We got 7 questions, like the 7 C's, and I would say let's start from the first one, okay? Good. So this is the first time in 4 or 5 billion years since Earth was formed that it has been possible for life to move beyond what we know and into another planet. It's more than a transatlantic journey, if you think. This is about finding a new home within the universe. If you were to relocate to Mars and leave behind most of what we know as humans, would marketing and communication be one of the disciplines that you would bring to Mars? And if not, what discipline would you bring to Mars in order to plant the seed and prosper for a longer time?
Wow, that's a big question to kick off with. I mean, thanks for the profoundness of that. I mean, it's funny because I remember reading Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and one of the first people that they sent off out to space was a marketing group of people because they didn't have much use on Earth. It was quite funny, but I actually really believe what we do does make a difference. And I think that if brands have got a huge opportunity to really shape the future if they're purposed in the right way. And if we've, like as a creative industry, we've got the opportunity to actually help shape that brand purpose and that platform for those brands to actually make an impact for good, that's a good thing, right? I also think human beings are looking for navigation right now. They're looking, it's been a crazy experience we've all been through. The world's been turned upside down and inside out. And I think one of the coordination points people place their navigation on is marketing and advertising. It's a reference of culture. So if I was gonna go to Mars, I would be taking what I knew along with me and my experience, and I've got it so deeply baked within my DNA. I love what I do, so I would definitely take over the inspiring parts of marketing and try and purpose it in a way to help humanity flourish and to help correct the wrongs and to give people direction in a way. So I probably would do it, yeah.
It's very interesting because when I was writing this question, I try, every time I write questions, I try to answer myself. And I thought well, yeah, of course, I'll move to Mars and I'm going to bring marketing and communication because I'm going to need to sell piece of lands to people that want to build houses. But then I immediately realized that I was thinking with that kind of human structure that we were taught here, right? Maybe there is not even that kind of concept of selling something. Maybe there is not that concept of this is a piece of land for you, you're going to have a house. Maybe everything is so different. And it sometimes occurred to me that our limitation is our own knowledge. We can't go beyond our knowledge, beyond what you know, right? So it's very difficult to imagine what you don't know. Anyway, that's a very good answer. Let's go on the second question. So during the 1999 Griffith Award, Stanley Kubrick connected across the ocean for his acceptance speech, couldn't be there. He was shooting Eyes Wide Shut with Nicole Kidman, Tom Cruise. Now, during the acceptance speech, a few minutes in, they start actually giving a very curious interpretation of the Icarus tale. Now, the tale recounts the story of a father and a son who used wings to escape from the island of Crete. Icarus has become better known as the flyer who fell from the sky because he got too close to the sun, so the wax melts and he fell. Now, Stanley say, maybe the lesson here is not don't fly too high. It's about do a better job with wax and feathers. It's a peculiar way of shifting perspective and looking at a problem from a totally different angle. So my question for you is, when was the last time that you truly shift perspective and you look at something from a different angle and suddenly it reveals something completely different?
That's another great question. I love your questions. Thanks. So, I mean, I think that going into COVID was an eye-opener for me, just like having a global role. I was the global CCO of TBWHI day, and I was traveling all around the world, and I was like spending a lot of time in different markets in China and Middle East and Africa and Europe, and obviously the States as well, because I live in New York. And then all of a sudden I was like sitting in my living room at home and I couldn't travel, and like my role changed, right? Like, and I was starting to question the future of marketing and advertising. And like, there was two options for me. I could carry on sort of plugging away at trying to fight the good fight of globalizing everything and, you know, activating the collective to do great work everywhere I could and helping our clients in whatever way we could. And the other way to do it was to think, well, this, back to your first question, it was almost like Mars. It was a new environment, right? And there's something really exciting about that. It's almost like COVID had brought the future sooner, and it gave me a great opportunity to find a way to reinvent myself. So I broke away and I did a startup with a partner friend of mine called Colin Mitchell, called Platformer. And it was liberating, man, because we had the opportunity of building something new from the ground up that had never been done before. So we said, if we were to do it again, and this is a brand new landscape, how would we do it better? How would we do it differently? And the first thing we did was we built a distributed model agency that tapped into a talent cloud of 600 or 700 creatives worldwide. Like, through all my traveling and all my amazing friendships I'd built over the years, working in different, you know, I worked in Europe, I worked in the States, I've worked in Africa, I've worked everywhere. So I knew a lot of people, and so did Colin. And then we built a whole brand new model around how we engage with our clients as well, based on very simple processes and tools. So less of the vagueness of working with a regular traditional agency, and more sort of a clear sort of input-output system that then built the right team around it to deliver on the marketing challenges that were needed. And to me, that was just a liberating moment of really pushing myself out of my own comfort zone into something brand new. And it was unknown territory, and it was exhilarating, man. After 3-4 months, we had 6 clients. We were working with Vice Media Group as one of our founder clients. They were amazing. We met everybody at the sort of group level in Refinery 29, in Pulse Films, in Vice Studios, in Vice News, in Virtue. And we were really inspired. And quickly, that experience was so positive, it turned into a conversation about being acquired. So Colin and I, at one stage, we were sitting there going, wow, it's been 6 months only of our startup, and we're already considering an acquisition. We never planned for it, but it was really exciting because it was a huge opportunity to take a new approach of marketing and bolt it together with a global media company with production capabilities everywhere on the ground. And it exponentially just leapfrogged us forward into a brand new model, which is much more about entertainment, youth culture, insights, really understanding where the world is going to go next, and helping our clients navigate that in a way that's very modern and progressive. So, I mean, for me personally, that was an incredible experience, because I never planned to end up where I'm at. I'm now the Chief Creative Officer of Vice Media Group and the co-president of Virtue. But I think taking a leap of faith and taking a step into the unknown and thinking of every step of your journey as something new, and like Icarus, instead of, you know, not flying so close to the sun, just thinking how to do it better, how to do it differently, and how to attack a problem and solve it in a lateral way. It's
That's
really
a
liberating.
very interesting lesson for young people, because I do think that, like, you know, when it's about creative that reached the top, as you like did, like, you know, chief creative officer of a big, like, you know, agency, it's very hard to think, oh, these kind of people, they're going to reinvent themselves when, like, you know, adversity strikes. Instead, it's like, when you do it, it's a great optimistic lesson for everybody, because if you do it, if you, someone like you that arrived to the top can do it, then like inspire like a young person to do it. You know what I mean? Because I think it's harder to do it when you are on the top, when you really had to reinvent yourself and let go a lot of the things that you were attached to or you were defined by. It's like, you know, the saying goes like, when you have nothing you lose, there is nothing to lose, right? Like you have more bravery, you dare more. But I think the higher we go, the more comfortable we get within our, like, you know, position and role. And it's very hard at one point to shift perspective and say, you know what, I'm going to do something completely different now. So something has to happen in our life, like the pandemic, to push us to do this.
That's so true. I mean, I love what you're saying, and it's absolutely true. I think the older you get, the more kind of deeply embedded in a rut you become, even though you don't intend to be. And I think being a creative, you've always got to, you know, calibrate your perspective and try and stay neutral in a situation and see it for what it is, and not be jaded and not be kind of clouded by experience in a way.
Absolutely.
And being able to find new ideas and being able to push into new spaces creatively requires that sort of that freshness always. And so I, you know, I learned a lot from that experience, and it was inspiring for me, and I recommend it to anyone. I think just take that leap of faith, follow your heart, don't hold yourself back, because you'll regret it one day if you do, and you'll be so surprised at what you're capable of doing if you just have the courage and bravery to take that step.
Awesome, man. Third question. This story is about changing your navigation course. Now it begins with these words. Camilla, I love you, but you just spent the last year of your life working on a piece of junk. You're good, but you should stick to what you know. It should be personal. Now, these are the words pronounced by John Cassavetes. He was one of the greatest Hollywood director and screenplayer. And these words were directed to Martin Scorsese, a young Martin Scorsese. Also, they sound harsh and unforgiving. They inspired young Martin and made him realize that anything outside his personal experience wasn't worth pursuing. And so Martin stuck to what he knew. He was a little kid that grew up in Little Italy, and he knew very, very well that environment. And so you might say that if nowadays we have Martin Scorsese's signature style, it's because of John Cassavetes' words back at the early career of Marty, when he say, don't do this, this is junk, do what you think is very personal to you. Now, have you ever had a mentor in your life, early in your career, that made you realize that you were on the wrong path and truly like steered you on the right path?
That's another really good question. I mean, I think for me, one of my most inspiring mentors I've ever had in my life was John Hunt. Actually, you know, I started off my career in South Africa. I studied graphic design. I went into Ogilvy as a graphic designer. I got stuck in a studio of like 25 other kids my age, and we had to sort of fight it out for good opportunities and briefs. And eventually, after 2-3 years, I managed to do some good work, and I started getting noticed in the industry. And John called me, and he convinced me to join Hunt Lascaris at that time, which was a real up-and-coming challenger startup brand. And I was on another path, and I was quite scared to change because I was already quite established, and I, you know, had my partner in Ogilvy, and I was doing what I thought was the right thing. And it was this moment of a crossroads, and he convinced me to take that leap of faith. And he did it in such a cool way. They sent me like a box the one day, and I opened it up, and inside there was a crowbar. And it said, like, it was written like, what do we have to do to get you out of there? And I just loved that. And I still didn't accept. And then they sent me a Cannes Lion, and they engraved my name on it. They said, put your name here. And I just couldn't refuse. It was such an exciting, cool culture to belong to. And the moment I stepped into that agency, I knew that the stakes were higher, the expectations of what I needed to do were higher. There was a sense of responsibility, creativity to really deliver and do great work. And that pushed me into new spaces. And that became a springboard for me to go and work in Paris and across Europe. And so I owe a lot of my career to John Hunt. And all throughout my career, I've sort of like crossed paths with him again. And he's a real sage. He's given me such good advice, you know, throughout the different levels I've been at in my career. And he's just a very wise, brilliant, iconic, dignified leader who is very lucid and has kept a sense of balance in his life, which I love. I mean, you get a lot of assholes in this industry. He's not an asshole, that's for sure.
Right. And I think it's a lighthouse for many people that's not just like, you know, for people that come from South Africa, but also like across the States, across the globe, like inside, like, you know, our industry. I told you before, like we started recording, that I met him once, very, very briefly. I actually harassed him almost, because what happened back in the day, we used to go around with like portfolio, like, you know, hard case portfolio. And I remember I was invited by the Clio Award as a future Clio. And we had a bunch of guys like picked like from all around the world. And like, you know, and during a party, John Hamm was there. And I remember like I stood behind him and I asked him to look at my portfolio. And poor man, like, you know, he was drinking, having fun with his friend. And he was like this asshole, like asking like, hey, you look at my portfolio? And I think it was crazy. But, you know, I think those are the days where, I mean, I'm going to sound like a grandpa now, but, you know, it was fun. Like, it was very like tangible days, you know, because you go around really with that, like, you know, hard case portfolio. And you were looking at the person reviewing your portfolio, like flipping pages one after the other. Like, you know, you could actually, the noise of those days, like always come to my mind, like, you know. Anyway, for a question. During one of the most watched TED Talk of all time, educator Ken Robinson brought this fact to the foreground. In the winter of 2004, it rained in Death Valley. Then in spring 2005, there was a phenomenon. The whole Death Valley was carpeted with flowers. What it proved is that Death Valley is not really death. It's just dormant. Now, right at the surface are the seeds of possibility waiting for the right condition to come about. If the conditions are right, life is inevitable. It happens all the time. You take an area, a school, a district, you change the condition, and immediately something flourished. Now you became, in 2007, a chief credit officer, and you've been chief credit officer for a while. And it's the top ranking, like, you know, the highest position like a creative can have. Now, have you ever stepped in a credit department that was almost the Death Valley? And it started raining, and it was your rain. Something flourished. If this happened, my question is like, what is in your rain, Chris? What do you use to make sure that like something that is dormant start flourishing?
Oh man, that's really close to my heart. I love that because I absolutely love my job. It's not a job for me, it's a calling, and I get such a kick out of like watching people flourish and creating the right environment for them to flourish. So like that's what I'm all about. And I just love, you know, getting people to realize their potential. And
right.
And part of it is like I've often stepped into an agency or creative environment where people are browbeaten, they're tired, they've sort of given up on like doing great creative. It's not even like on the radar anymore. And it's very sad that, and like, I think the first thing is to like actually help people realize their huge value, because everybody's got great ideas. It's not just like an exclusive right for the lucky few. It's just about finding the right way to draw that out of them and giving them the belief that they can do it, making sure that they've got the right opportunities for them to actually like flourish and think of creative ideas in, and then just fueling that and adding momentum to that, and then just bolting on support around that in a way that makes them unstoppable. And it's an evolutionary journey, right? Like, I mean, I've been in agencies where year 1 and 2 is all about just like waking it up and getting people to get excited and helping them convert some great ideas. And then it hits a sort of a period where it starts to attract more talent, and then people take on a momentum that's unstoppable. Within 3-4 years, the best feeling being a CCO is you walk into an agency and it's just naturally, organically happening. And people are selling and making and thinking proactively, and they're not waiting for briefs anymore even. And that's what I love. I love that.
Yeah, it's great. You know, I think in life, not just in advertising, there is always like a tipping point, right? Where you try, and then suddenly it happens, and you get it right. It could be like in advertising where, like, you know, one day you step into the credit department, everything works perfectly. It could be like, you know, uh, doing like products like, you know, sports, and then suddenly you get the movements right, you know. But I think almost as a metaphor in life, and like, you know, I'm a big, like, huge, like, motorcycle rider, and I get a little bit technical here, but I think there is always like that kind of thrill when you are like getting on the freeway and you go like first, second, third gear, but then you get the sweet spot where exactly the two pistons full, like, you know, they start like literally working in sync and perfectly at the right RPM. And it's like such a great thing. I always thought is a metaphor of life where, like, you know, you start, you warm up, you get to the point where, oh, now you can make it, and then you just like go and cruise, and it's great. Anyway, fifth question. James Roy, one of the most fascinating writers of the past 30 years, keeps a quote from the great pianist Glenn Gould in his pocket. It's about being disconnected to modern life, but yet being in our times. And it goes like this: the great thing about the music of Richard Strauss is that it presents to us an example of the man who makes river his own time for not being of it, who speaks for all generations, but being known. It is an ultimate argument on individuality, an argument that a man can create his own synthesis of time without being bound by the conformities that time imposes. Now, as a creative, you are right in the middle of being connected, being always constantly connected. And the funny things, like, you are required to be connected to someone else's time, someone else's trend, someone else's generation, just to understand, to immerse yourself. Now, how do you disconnect from the imperative need of being connected all the time? And when you disconnect, is there a place physically or mentally where you actually create your own sense of time and nobody enter there? It's just you and your own sense of time.
So it's really, really insightful questions. And I just love the provocation of this, because it's, again, something that I've just subliminally, I think, always had in the way that I've carried myself through life. It's like, it's really important as a creative and a marketer to be connected to the speed of culture and the cultural conversation and where youth culture is going to take the world next. And that's what Vice Media Group is all about. Like, we study youth culture, we connect with youth culture every day. We make 16,000 pieces of content. We've got an ongoing conversation on our platforms with that. So that gives us the ability to really connect our marketing and our clients' brands to cultural conversation, cultural pockets of energy, and cultural change. But at the same time, if you want to be iconic, I think you've got to try and make the distinction between reflecting culture and actually creating culture. And I think that's the difference between doing good work or doing iconic work. I think iconic work sets the benchmark. It sets the North Star. It's timeless. It transcends different demographics. It taps into sort of a human spirit in a way that connects humanity together in a bigger way. So I don't know, I call it lazy sometimes, but sometimes I do withdraw from all of that stuff. And I don't always want to be so reliant on finding the next cultural cue or the next trigger. I want to also try and feel it in my own soul, in my own heart, and feel what moves me in a way, or inspires me, or makes me feel something strong enough to be compelled to act or do. And I think when you can create work that does that, it speaks from the heart. It speaks from your own experience, and it's powerful because it's authentic and it's human.
You told me that you are a surfer, and I do believe when you are there in the open water, you create your own sense of time, right? It's probably the ultimate disconnect. I mean, because nothing is around you, right? Like, you know, time slows down, and like it has a totally different pace. Like, you know, I'm not a surfer, but for me, and this seems like a very weird, like, you know, parallel. your water is my highway. Like, you know, what I do, I just get on my motorcycle and go on the highway, on the freeway.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's what I like disconnect completely, you know?
Yeah. I mean, it's probably the most symbiotic experience you can have with nature and with the earth. It sounds trippy, but like there's a moment where time just sort of like disappears and
Right.
you are at one with the ocean, and there's a sense of flow when you get that wave and you can kind of, you're just carving these big turns and you're getting this feeling of like incredible grace and poetry. It's a beautiful, that's my spiritual place, man. I go there to reconnect with everything that makes me human in a way.
Because I think as a creative, we so suffocated, like, I wouldn't say suffocated, but we so pushed to be overly connected that we need to have those kind of like moments. It's like for a therapist, like, you know, when I go, every time like I go to my therapist, I always think like, who's gonna be your therapist? Because you get so much shit from us. You had to have your own therapist, right? And they do actually. They had to have someone who they talk to that clean them up of all the shit that other people like me like bring to them. And I think like somehow it's like, you know, happen the same with us creative. You are required to be constantly connected, but there must come a time where you had to clean yourself up. And for you, it's surfing. For me, motorcycle. But yeah, question.
I relate to that. I mean, I can see the similarities completely.
Yeah, right.
I agree. It's a good release, and it's a good way to reconnect with what's real and what's important and what's fundamental in life in a way.
Definitely. This question, here's what would happen if the ocean were gone. Without clouds forming over the ocean, rain would be incredibly rare and the planet would become desert. The sun would continue to pound the equator, turning into a furnace. Greenhouse gases from the world's fire would trap the sun's energy. Humans will pack along to Antarctica and eventually we will die off. Pretty much we'll be fucked. Earth's only survivor will be small colonies of bacteria hidden underground in hot springs. So without oceans, everything else dies. Do you think there is anything equivalent to the ocean in our industry, advertising industry? Is there something that without we will be dead?
Yeah, I do. I think the art of it is so important, the creativity and the art of what we do. I mean, I think the best advertising and marketing is the perfect intersection between art and commerce in a way. And if you take the art out of it and you take the randomness out of finding the artful ideas and you make it all a science, you lose the magic, I think. And that's a constant struggle as the world progresses into more of a data-driven world and people are trying to make a science out of every single step of human behavior. And sure, those tools do give us deeper insights into our audiences and help us, you know, contextually place our work at the right moment in time against the right audience with the right message. I mean, there's a lot of merit in them, but I mean, without the artfulness, the art to me is like the ocean. It all sort of dries up and becomes a bit clinical and cold and loses the emotion and loses the humanity of it all.
Yeah, I totally agree.
I think that's the ocean of our industry for me.
I totally agree. I totally agree with you, man. It's like, it couldn't be any different. Like, yeah, if you take like arts out of the equation, it would be like a very dry environment. Anyway, hey, we reached the shore. So this is the last question that we asked to all our guests. If there was a wind that blew your sail and you had to name it, what would the name be?
Wow, that's beautiful. I remember going to a concert in Nîmes in the south of France in a coliseum, and it was David Bowie.
Oh, wow.
And it was amazing. And he, you know, Nerd played first and the crowd was like enjoying it, but they're a bit impatient. And then the lights went down and there was a wind blowing through the stadium. It was open air. And he stepped out on stage with a spotlight and his blonde flowing hair. He just looked so like iconic. And he said, "The Mistral blew me here." The crowd went crazy. Man. So like, to me, my wind is the Mistral. It'll never change. But
that's beautiful, man.
There's this kind of like mystic sense of this wind in France called the Mistral. And I love
that's so beautiful, man. There's a conversation that happened between David Bowie and like William Burroughs. And I think like the conversation was recorded in Rolling Stone magazine. And it was David Bowie explaining William Burroughs like the conception of Ziggy Stardust and the old like metaphor of like the universe jumpers those like little people that that they jump from a universe to a universe, and sometimes the jump is not long enough, so they fall onto Earth. And it was just like, my
Wow.
God, man, how can it
Great
can't get better than that, you know?
Yeah, totally. Yeah,
Hey, Chris, thank you so much. Like, it was an amazing like journey, and like I wish you all the best. And like, you know, you are at the top, and I wish you like you stay on the top and you keep reinventing yourself. Thank you so much, man.
thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure. I really enjoyed it. Thank you
Thank
so much.
you. Bye bye, man.